I don't think this woman needs any introduction really, because I think it says it all. Mother of baby Bia, set up this wonderful charity. She's one of our past students, I'm proud to say. This is the kind of students we produce, and inspirational. So I'll hand you over to Steph.
Anyone who's been on my study days realises I don't stay still, so I'm going to try to. As you all know, I'm Steph, so I'm the founder of Beyond Bee and Bee's Mum. So a little bit of an introduction. I decided to entitle my presentation as A Birth is a Birth, because I think really exploring a lot of choice and things within what we do, whether that's baby loss or not, a birth is a birth. So a little bit about pregnancy. So obviously when people do become pregnant, they find out they're pregnant, there's lots of decisions that they need to make, there's a lot of choices that they need to make, there's a lot of new information, and whether that's something that people are going to go on to explore themselves, or whether that's things that they find out just through the healthcare services that they come into contact with, it's things they see on Facebook posts, it's things that they see in social media, in newspapers, on the news. There's a lot of things for them to kind of grasp really as well. And there's a lot of choices. So where are you going to book your pregnancy? What does booking your pregnancy mean? Because a lot of people think, well, what does that mean? Have you booked? What does that mean? Because we become used to that terminology, and actually for somebody, most people don't really know what booking means. Midwifery-led care, consultant-led care, what's the difference? Who am I going to see? Does that mean that I'm going to see a consultant every time I go, and that just because I've got a consultant's name on my notes, does that mean that I then will see that consultant? Because most people would think that if you're under a consultant, then that's who you're going to see. But actually, the reality isn't that. It just means that you will come under them. Bloods are quite a big part of a lot of pregnancy care, but actually, are we informing people about what they are? Are we telling people what they mean? Are we telling people with enough knowledge for them to best understand the reason they're having bloods? Because a lot of people will just go, all right, I'm going to do your bloods, here's your booking bloods. And that's what a lot of people do. But that's not how we empower people to understand that they're actually making a choice. Those bloods are going to go retested, and they get a HIV positive result at the end of that. What's the impact of that? And all they were doing was having a blood test because they're pregnant. So it's making sure that people do know why they're doing things. Scans. A scan isn't just, I'm going to look at your baby, which a lot of people do have a lot more scans now. A lot of people are doing them more outside of the NHS. A lot of people are going for private scans, and some more trained than others in delivering certain information. But actually there's quite a big impact in having that scan as well. And so are people thinking about that before they do it, and the reasons why? Are they reading the information? Are they being told the information that they need to know? Where they're going to deliver, the type of delivery they might have. So there's a lot of choices out there that they're already having to think about just generally in the pregnancy. So I'm going to take you through basically like a timeline of my pregnancy, and what happened, what choices I got, and kind of the impacts of some of those. So I found out I was pregnant quite early on. I'd done a pregnancy test, and at that point I was very much like, shit. This was not the plan, but I'm going with it. So I had some choices quite quickly. So some of my choices were, okay, I'm already vomiting. That was the first sign, and I've got even bigger boobs than I already do. So they were the first symptoms. And so I was quite sick, and I was in quite a lot of pain. There's a lot of women in the room, so this is quite relatable for a lot. But I was getting a lot of period-like pain initially, and that's what I was expecting, not quite this. So I obviously found out I was pregnant, and know pain associated with pregnancy, not always a good thing, especially in early pregnancy. And I was having quite severe pain, so I went to the early pregnancy unit because I knew that that's where I needed to go. Because I was like, I don't know if this is normal. Obviously, having medical knowledge, it could be an ectopic pregnancy, so I didn't know what was going on. So I did go to the early pregnancy unit, so that meant I had to have bloods taken. but I also needed to understand what those bloods were for, and obviously with my knowledge, I did know what they were for anyway, and the perks of work were that at the time I was actually living with one of my friends who was a registrar, so he actually was looking after me there, so I knew what the bloods were for. So I went to have bloods taken to check my hormone levels, and then there would be a scan to follow. So what would that scan then mean? So I was going having a scan basically to see, is this a viable pregnancy, and is it in the right place? What's going on? And I don't know what I'm actually going to go into. And this is the point where a lot of people do know that you're having a scan at an early point in a pregnancy, and not typically around the gestations that we typically offer. So it's quite early. I could go into that room and just be told that my baby's already died, or my baby's never developed, or I'm having these symptoms, but there's not actually anything in my uterus to show that. So at that point, a lot of people do know that that's a potential. Obviously, some people might not know that at all. My bloods were normal, so that meant, okay, from now on, you'll have a scan. So then we'll know what's going on. And obviously, you've got to cash in some things when you work in the NHS, because there's very few kind of things that you get. So before the end of one of my shifts, I'd been in pain for a few days and I was waiting for this scan, and I'd had a scan anyway, and they thought I was maybe about 5 weeks, but all they could see at the time was a gestational sac, and there was no heartbeat at the time. So they said, come back in 2 weeks, and that was that. So I was still waking up at 3 a.m, I was still working, I was trying to alleviate the pain, so I was having baths and getting up at 3 a.m. just to have a bath, to think, and all I can take is paracetamol, and then kind of wondering what's going on, why am I in so much pain? And I never actually really thought people could have this much pain so early on. And then I ended up waiting to have my next scan, and I was at work, and one of the registrars had been looking at me most of the night and just been like, you're in so much pain. She said, if you want me to, this was the day before my official scan, I'll scan you, because obviously you're under the care of us anyway, and she'd be the person who was looking after me anyway. So she said, I'll scan you, and then we can make a plan, because she said you can't be in this much pain without us doing something about it. So obviously someone actually kind of advocated for me there. So I did have a scan. So this was the first time. You can see a little flicker like around the top. So that was the first time I'd seen a heartbeat. So I filmed it, sent it to my partner, and was like, we're having a baby. So I was about, the scan before that was about 5 weeks, so it was about 6 weeks at this point. So they then obviously I had a lot of other choices to make. We went for our official scan the following day, and what happened was we walked into the room, and there was a chair here, the bed was here, the scan machine was here, and there was a sonographer, and they had another person who they introduced as, I can't remember what they actually said, but basically most of us know that to confirm if a baby's died, you need 2 people. And the reason there was 2 people in that room is for that reason, on an early pregnancy unit. But they weren't going to tell me that there and then, but I just knew that reason. So they had 2 people there, and my partner pulled his chair forward. So he was like in the middle and also could see the screen, because the screen was there. And the woman turned around and said, move your chair back. So we both kind of looked at each other, knowing the outcome of the scan, having had the scan yesterday. We just kind of did as we were told, and moved back. And at the time I thought, I'm not even challenging it. I think I'd probably finished a night shift at this point as well, so I was just like, I'm going to leave it. Had the scan and everything was fine, but kind of reflecting on that, you're entitled to see your baby dead, alive, in the uterus, not in the uterus. It doesn't matter. And for someone to say you're not entitled to see your baby on a screen, it's not their right to do that. If you're scanning me, I've got a right to see it just as much as my partner has. And if I'm giving my consent for him to see that because he's in the room. So you've not got a right to say no. And at the time, I think I wish I'd said something now. So I then had more choices, because I knew this was a viable pregnancy at this point. I knew that the pregnancy should progress. So I needed to book my pregnancy. So booking my pregnancy for me was, I contacted my GP, found out who the to book in with the midwife. And so I went to the first contact appointment, and it actually ended up that despite the fact that I could see the hospital I worked at from the GP, it came under another hospital. So I wanted to be booked under my own hospital. So I had to then change my care straight away, which obviously is something that everybody knows about. You are entitled to book wherever you want, whether that's where your GP covers or not. So I did that. And in terms of me then carrying on with my care, I work in a very high risk environment, and I think my passion for bereavement care has been there since I was a student, and it was always my plan. So for me, baby death happens. It's a very big thing in my life, regardless of the fact that I've lost a baby now or before. So for me, my care needed to be high risk to keep me at ease, because I knew my anxiety would be really high, because babies do die, and I was not ashamed to admit that could happen. So for me, I needed growth scans just to give me some reassurance, because I knew that would help my health. So I knew I wanted to have scans. VSD, so that's a ventricular septum defect. My partner's brother had one, so in his heart. So we knew that we'd need a fetal specialist scan to have a look over the heart at some point. So I thought the best person to then book under as a consultant would be a fetal specialist, because then at least you're going to just see that one person rather than keep being referred. So I chose my consultant because I know them. I chose a fetal specialist. And so I chose to book under consultant-led care, to the point, and I got to sit down and he said, what would you like? Obviously, in terms of me being able to be informed about my care, because he knew I knew a lot about it. So I did say I want growth scans, but I don't want them really, really regular, but just a few, just to give me reassurance. And obviously I knew when to come in. So in terms of who care for you, I think it's really important that we do explain to women that just because they're booked under a consultant, that doesn't mean you'll see a consultant. And also, if you are coming in for appointments in the hospital, you might just see a midwife. And sometimes people are like, well, I'm booked under consultant-led care, why am I just seeing a midwife? And I've seen that being said. Or why have I seen a junior doctor and meant to see the consultant because I'm under this consultant? And it's not that they're doing anything wrong, they've just not been informed, and at the end of the day, that's a choice that they might have made, or it might not be because their pregnancy might have changed. But also they should be aware of what does that mean, because often we just say, right, you're under Dr. Smith, and that's the way it is, and they just assume they're going to see Dr. Smith. So at 10 weeks, I was 13 hours into a 14-hour shift. I'd not been for a wee all day, which is pretty normal, and I went to the toilet, pulled my underwear down, saw blood, pulled them straight back up, didn't have a wee. Went to the matron in charge and just said, I'm going to go to the early pregnancy unit, XYZ is happening at the moment, and off I went. So I went and everything looked fine. The bleeding had settled, it was all blood, and they arranged for me to have a scan the following day. I knew that at that point, this could be the point my baby's died. And I knew that. Some people wouldn't necessarily recognise that, and so they'd said they would arrange a scan for me. And I think sometimes, again, it's an important thing to say to people that what the reason is for doing the scan. You're not just doing the scan to check your baby's alive, but also we're checking, is there an obvious bleed somewhere, what impact that could have, how that could change your care. But we don't always say that, we just say we're going to arrange a scan for you. But what does that mean? So we did go for the scan, and there our little baby was. And for the first time, it was quite overwhelming, really, because I'd been being sick. I had hyperemesis. I was having Stemetil injections more or less daily. And I needed something to show me that it was worth it. And this little baby was rolling around, waving, and I was like, there's actually a baby in there. I know I'm a midwife, but I can't believe that that's kind of happening. And so then I had another choice. So antenatal screening was something that I knew I wanted, obviously involving blood tests. There's a scan at around 12 weeks. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do. We had the discussion between ourselves about what impacts that screening would have for us. and if a result came back off the back of it, what we would then do, which is a conversation every single individual or couple or family should be having, because a lot of them think, I'm going for a scan and then I'll know my due date, or I'm going for a scan and I get to see my baby. But actually that scan isn't for that reason. It's a lot of the time for your antenatal screening, or it's to look that everything is developing as it should be. And actually you are screening, it's not just having a scan, because a scan isn't anything, it's got a risk. And so sometimes people need to understand that as well. So it's just about how we explain things. So we went for that scan. So I was about 12 weeks, and this was the photo I took away from that scan. I think looking back at the time, I didn't mind too much about what that image kind of shows, and then that is a baby, and I know it is, but at the time I was being scanned, and the sonographer had gone into quite extensive detail in the scan, and I was quite amazed at how scans changed even in the last 8 years, and how detailed she could get. And she had a student sonographer with her, so she was like, do you mind if I explain some aspects? So she was going through quite a lot, and I was kind of amazed at how much she could show. And she said she took the probe off and was about to finish. She went, oh, did you want a photo? So I was like, yeah, that'd be quite nice. She shoved the probe on, pressed a button, gave me a photo, and I was like, that didn't really reflect the scan I've just had. And for somebody in most pregnancies, when you get your baby at the end and you've gone home and you've got thousands of photos uploaded to the cloud, and then this is all you've got. And some people, that is all they've got. And we don't take away something it's not supposed to be like a medical diagnostic photo, and it's not something for fun, because that's not what the scan's for. But this is something that is most places, it's a paid thing. We are giving money for something that we take away, and they're doing it for that reason. It just puts money back into what they're doing. But also, it was just very blasé, and it lost that thought of, this is special, this is your baby, whether you've had 10, 20 or no babies before, it's irrelevant, and every moment for that individual family is special. And that's something I look at now and think, I get jealous of other people's scan photos, which isn't necessarily something I should be bothered about, but it is important because I've got a very limited amount of things. So obviously I told you about the VSD, so we decided, we were offered a scan at 16 weeks. So we went up to a specialist clinic and went to have the scan, and obviously we knew that what the impact could be off the back of this. A VSD can vary, it can be very extensive, or it can be quite simple that will cause no problems, some need surgery. So we knew that there could potentially be a problem. So we went for the scan, and again, our little baby's developed into this even bigger baby that's definitely got a lot of features that you start to recognise, and you're bonding with this baby. You think, I was quite getting some feelings at this point and little movements. So it was weird to think that this little person is the thing that's kind of giving me those feelings. And everything was fine off that scan. We were quite impatient and curious. Being a midwife, I always loved it when people have their baby and you always say, oh, you're having a boy or a girl or a surprise. And when people say they're having a surprise or they've not revealed the gender, and I was like, I want to do that. I definitely need a surprise. And then obviously I couldn't. So the moment I found out I was pregnant, and my partner even more so, was very much like he knew he wanted a girl. It was quite clear. So we were like, okay, we'll book. We actually found out at the previous scan, because he asked us if we wanted to know, and we thought, who better to tell us than a fetal specialist whose literal job is everything about babies. He knew them in and out, and we said, we'll find out now, but what we'll do is we will book a private scan so that our family can be with us, because our mums were so excited. It was both of their first grandchild with us, so we wanted them to be there and share in that moment. And so obviously we already knew, so we did go to a private clinic, and so we went there, and at the time she wasn't really cooperating, and so we had a little walk, and we'd gone back in, and eventually she said, right, okay, I can see everything now, you're having a boy. So I'm sat on this bed. We haven't told our mums that we know. So I'm sat on the bed. We look at each other, and I start filling up, and I start crying a little bit. My mum can see it from the other side of the room, and the sonographer looks at me and goes, "I'm just going to give you a minute." So she walks out, and my mum comes up to me and goes, "Did you not want a boy? It's okay." And I just burst into tears. I went, "I don't think it's a boy." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, we got told it was a girl last week, and now it's a boy, and now I don't know what we're having." So I'm a bit confused. So we came out of there feeling quite confused, really. So it wasn't quite the moment I'd imagined. So we did end up finding out that she was going to be a girl. So that was the scan that we had there. So again, had another choice. So more antenatal screening as part of the anomaly scan. And again, we'd had that conversation of there's certain things they're going to screen for, there's certain things that obviously they might pick up. What would be the impact of that, and what would our decisions be? And so about 20 weeks, my bump had got quite big. I was feeling quite a lot of movement, and there's the scan. So we'd gone into this scan, and the sonographer, I think, was very professional. We'd gone in, and she said, "So this scan is to check for any anomalies, and have you read the information about the screening programme?" And we'd said that we had, and she said, "Okay, so what will happen is I'll start the scan, and then if I will be quiet whilst I'm doing it, it's only because I'm concentrating, and then when I get to the end of the scan, I'll explain everything I'm doing." And so she starts scanning, and we're both just sat there, and there's a screen in front of us as well as the one she's looking at, so we can see everything that she can see. So she starts, and she's like, "Oh, your baby's very photogenic," and she's printing all these photos off, and I'm thinking, this is £5 every photo. I don't get paid that well. So she's printing all these, and she's like, "Right, okay, I'm going to actually carry on," but I wanted to take some then. So anyway, she carries on, and then we're both chatting. So we start chatting to each other, and we're both pointing out like bits that we recognise and things that we know. And she says, "So what do you both do?" So I say, "I'm a midwife," and my partner turns around and says, "I'm a doctor." And she said, "Do you both work here?" So we both proceed to nod. And she goes, "Oh, okay." And then as she's doing the scan, she then starts to explain everything she's doing and using terminology. And I think if you can speak out loud what you want to say rather than trying to convey it then into layman terms, that takes more concentration sometimes. So I think she just started saying it as she was doing it. So she carried on, and we were just kind of having a chat then while she was doing it. So she'd started on her head, and then she'd kind of done a flip, so she kind of carried on somewhere else. And then towards the end of the scan, she's like, "Right, I'll just do her head now." She's staying still. So she starts to look at her head, and she said, "There's part of her brain that I can't quite see, and it might just be that your dates are a little bit out by maybe even just a week, because it is a small part of the brain, but also I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to come in to double check if that's okay and see if she finds the same findings." Obviously both of us working in the NHS know that a second opinion typically isn't a very nice one. So we both look at each other and say, "That's fine." And so she brings in one of her colleagues who asks my permission if it's okay to scan, and she proceeds to scan me and says, "I've found the same findings." And what they couldn't see is the septum pellucidum. So they then say, the other person leaves, and we said, "Well, what's going to happen now?" So she said, "Well, what'll happen is I'll do a referral to the fetal medicine unit. So they'll need to do a more detailed scan with one of the consultants, and then that'll take usually about a week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you into another room, and then I'll print off your photos and bring those into you, and I'll find out when I can get an appointment." So we went into the room, sat there, and waited. And then we basically got a knock on the door. About 10 minutes later, she came in with this pile of photos, and I'm not even underestimating, and they were free. So I got all these photos, shoved them in my bag, didn't care about them at this point. And I think I made more use about the box of tissues in the room. So then she left the room again, and about 20 minutes later, someone else came in. So we'd not had any communication as to what was going on, why we were just sat in this room. And one of the registrars that I knew knocked on the door, and she said, one of the consultants is going to see you now, so another benefit. I get to be seen now. So we were like, well, that's great. So it was about another half an hour, and we got called through to the fetal medicine unit. So they started to scan me, and he said, I'm going to do the whole scan again. So everything, and obviously left the head till last. So we got towards the end of the scan, and one thing that was of particular notice to me was that he pressed on so hard, quite really low down, literally on my bladder. As he was pressing, it felt like he was going to come out the other side with how hard he was pressing. So I thought he can probably see something a bit different, and he was like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Obviously I don't know anything about brains, so he showed me, this is what I'm looking for, this is a shape, and I can understand why they might have not seen it because it's this big and that's what it looks like, but there it is. So we were like, oh great, okay. And he was like, okay, so I'm just gonna write out your scan report. So he starts writing it out, and my partner's always a bit anxious about things to do with medical things anyway. So they said to him, kind of looked at him, and they were like, if you want, we can do a MRI scan for reassurance. So I looked at him, he nodded, I nodded, we were having an MRI scan. So obviously an MRI scan then potentially could lead to something else. So that was the further testing. So we'd said that we'd have an MRI scan, and then he spent the next 2 weeks, because that was how long we'd need to wait for the MRI scan, saying, but what about if they then find something else, and then they find something else, and you can see where the anxiety was. So we were going on holiday, so we came back off our holiday, and then I was in the middle of nights. I couldn't get off my night shift, so went for the MRI scan. So it was 22 weeks. Went for the MRI scan in between my nights, went onto my night shift, and then they told us that the results would be with us on the Thursday or the Friday. So got to Thursday, we were still on nights, hadn't had any missed calls, so I was kind of like, great, because I've not had my sleep disturbed, and I don't like my sleep being disturbed, so good luck with the baby. And Friday, I was finishing nights, so we decided that we were going to go to the Trafford Centre. And he'd seen something that he wanted to buy, so we were going to go there, and then we were going to the house that we were moving into, starting measuring up for things that we needed to buy. So we've just been in there, and we were in the car on the motorway, and the phone rings. So we can see it's a hospital, it's a withheld number, so we pull off slightly, but we're on like the hard shoulder. And that's definitely not what we were expecting to hear on the phone. I was on the phone, he was driving, and so I was listening to the conversation. And they said, I'm really sorry, we weren't expecting this, which isn't the first line you really want to hear. But basically what they've found was a condition called schizencephaly, and it was a brain condition, and it affects 1 in 100,000 babies, so it's pretty rare. And one thing to just jump in with that is they told us you will be contacted with the results on Thursday or Friday. But that conversation was more of a, you will be, this is what is happening and this is how it happens. And as someone who's not worked in a fetal medicine unit or knew kind of that process, I was a bit like, now, should that conversation have been different? Did anyone consider the fact that we were now on the motorway, on the hard shoulder, understandably not in a very nice predicament at this time, and we safely need to get home, and that is not a safe environment to be told that information. We're also on our own. We're both parents, so it's affecting us both. How could that have been different? And that should have been different. So that's what a normal brain looks like. And that's what a brain with schizencephaly looks like. But this can't be diagnosed on ultrasound, so it could only be picked up on an MRI scan. So we had to get home. So I also needed to relay this information to Graham because I'd been sat in the passenger seat. So I relayed that information to him. He burst into tears. I then had to get out of the car, get him out the driver's seat, put him into the passenger seat, all on the hard shoulder, and put him in the passenger seat, drive home. I also needed to contact the estate agents because we now weren't going to do measurements on our new house. So I had to do that, obviously, hands-free. And yeah, so I did that and then hit every red light on the way. And then we got back and rang the fetal medicine unit again. And he wanted everything to be written down, so he wrote everything down that they said, and he started researching. And we were told that we'd be seen on Monday at 10 a.m. This was Friday afternoon at about 2 o'clock. So, who's going to speak to us now? It's Friday, we've got Saturday, we've got Sunday, we've just been left. Where's my support? Where's our support? Is anybody going to tell us what's going to happen? What is that appointment supposed to be? Like, what's the reason you're bringing us in? I am a mum at this point. I'm not a midwife. I should not have to use any of my existing knowledge to know what is going to happen. For all I know, I'm going to that appointment and they're going to tell me how my baby's brain's going to be fixed and everything's going to be okay. But actually, I know that that's not the reality of what's going to happen. And no one could say anything different. And they didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't ask if I wanted someone to ring me tomorrow. They didn't ask me anything. They just said, we'll see you on Monday at 10. Am I supposed to go back to work now? Am I not? Obviously, I knew I wasn't going to do, but no one advocated for me. We knew what the result would be for us because we'd had that conversation, because we knew what an anatomy scan was for. We knew the reason we were having it, and we knew why we needed to have it, and then the impact of what could happen. But we also knew what the end result for her would be, and that actually, in reality, with a brain condition such as that, she would basically potentially never walk, never talk, never communicate. We couldn't tell her why she was having surgery again. We couldn't tell her why she was in hospital for the 5th time in the same month. We wouldn't be able to necessarily tell her all that. And she'd be having seizures all the time, and she potentially might have been blind. So we didn't know what the outcome would be, but we knew that that wasn't an outcome that you ever planned for your baby. And if we could take that pain away from her, then we would. So we knew we were going to do. And we made that decision without anybody advocating for us or giving us any advice or anyone being there for us or to even just to listen to us. So we made a choice that wasn't a choice, and it wasn't even put out there for us. It wasn't a choice that we were given, but one that we made on our own, but not a choice that anyone would ever want to make. So I call it a choice, but it's not really a choice. So I was 23 weeks. We'd spent the weekend, obviously, doing whatever you can do when you know your baby's going to die. And we went into the quiet room. So this is a typical quiet room setup: chairs, box tissues, standard. There weren't any flowers, NHS cuts. But we got into the room, and the consultant said, "I'm really sorry, we weren't expecting this." It was the same consultant that had done the scan. And I said, obviously no one was, but we've made a decision and we know what we want to do. So I said, we're not going to carry on with the pregnancy. I didn't want to sit in that room and go through a conversation for an hour about getting to the same point. I needed to go in there, tell him what I wanted and get on with it. So we went in, said that, and he said, okay, so what will happen is, I'm going to go into some of these abbreviations as well, in case anybody doesn't know what they are. We'll give you a tablet today, then you'll go home for 2 days, we'll bring you back in, we'll do KCL, then we'll start an induction and then go from there. So KCL is a procedure that basically stops the heartbeat whilst still in utero. So an injection is given under ultrasound of potassium chloride. That's what KCL stands for. And I said, well, that's not what we want. We want our baby to be born with us, stay with us, and die with us, and not with anybody else, and not by anybody else, because I'm 23 weeks and that's what we want to do. And he said, I don't want to end up in coroner's court. So I said, well, can I see the consultant I've been seeing through my pregnancy, because that's not the answer that I want. And at this point, it is a very grey area with 23 weeks, 24 weeks, but that is not the way to discuss it with a family. And for a lot of people who might not know what coroner's court is, and but that wasn't the way to speak to me about it. So I said, can I see the consultant I've been seeing? I don't think, it basically was, will you leave the room? But so that's what happened. The consultant who had seen me through the pregnancy did come, and he said, Steph, what I don't want for you is for you to see your baby being resuscitated when that's not the decision you've made for her. So basically, that would likely be what happened, but they said it was very subjective based on the neonatal consultant who would be on at that time. So whoever I end up with might say, yeah, you've got to resuscitate, and someone else might go, no, under the circumstances, don't resuscitate. And it was very grey. And so I asked to see the neonatal team because I wanted someone to give me an insight from that side as well. And we sat there for 2 hours and no one came, and I got to the point where my partner was practically begging me to just, he needed to go home. He couldn't process all this information anymore, and he just wanted us to go. And I said, I'll do it. I can't sit here, and I felt bullied is probably the only word I can use. So we left. I took a tablet, and we were told I had signed a form that said I was terminating my pregnancy. And then we left, and we didn't get given anything, so we weren't given any advice. We didn't have any information about who to contact. I know Labour Ward's number off by heart, but most people aren't going to know that. So that's who I knew to contact, but they didn't say that. I didn't have any follow-up other than that I needed to come back in 2 days at a certain time, but I might get rang and be told that actually I need to come later, but they'll let me know. I didn't get any independent advice, so in this circumstance, something like ARC, Antenatal Results and Choices, are completely independent, who can just talk you through it, would have been something useful, but at this moment in time, even I didn't think of that, even though I know about them. And nothing about what would happen next. No information. I was literally going to turn up on Wednesday and have a baby, but didn't know anything about it. And my partner certainly didn't. Like, obstetrics is not his thing. You might be a doctor, but it doesn't mean you know everything. And he certainly had never worked with bereaved families, so had no idea. So that was down to me. I advocated for him, and I told him what would happen, and I sat with all my family, and I brought them all together, and I told them what would happen, as though it wasn't even me. I had to do that, and I shouldn't have had to. And a birth plan is a birth plan, regardless of outcome, just like a birth is. And there were a lot of options available, just like there are for anybody. And there shouldn't be a single one on there that you wouldn't offer to any other family. There's obviously certain situations where sometimes, if they've got an existing reason as to why some of them won't be available to them, but obviously they're all a choice. And also, it should still be written there, it should still be explained, but also the reason why you wouldn't recommend it, or the reason why you wouldn't necessarily offer it. Or we might not have a pool, so you can't really have a pool birth if we've not physically got a pool, but is there a way we can work around that? So pain relief, position, people might not necessarily think about this. They've not attended birth classes because if they're at an early gestation, then they might not know about these things, so they need to be told about this. You've got this one chance to tell them it all, because then they're going to go home and think, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now, so what do I do? They can eat and drink, so what would be good for them to bring in and pack in their bag at home? Skin to skin. This is the one moment that they are going to have where their baby is warm, because there is no other time their baby's going to be warm again after this. So the moment the baby's born, that's their opportunity, because putting a freezing cold baby on your chest, as much as you might enjoy it still because it's your baby, that is raw, and that is freezing cold on your skin, and there's nothing harder. So doing it then is a great time, and to explain that to a family, the reasons why, because they deserve to know that, because it's a choice. I dreamt about that moment ever since before I was pregnant. Any time where you get to put your baby on your chest and you get that overwhelming emotion, like I am right now, then that's what a lot of people dream for. and I wanted that. Cutting the cord, that's a choice. Why should somebody cut the cord, give them the baby, usually wrapped up, and just hand them the baby like it's a gift? Like, no, they've birthed their baby, they're entitled to that, and if they want someone to cut the cord, and it's the same as if the baby was alive, why is that any different? So that should be a choice. Cord ties, that's not something we often use in the NHS, you don't see them that much, but that's still a choice, making people know that they're available and that they can use them. I worked in Uganda and I used the end of my glove to tie off a cord because we had nothing else. If I can use the end of a glove to tie a cord off, I can use a cord tie. It's no different, you can sterilise them, and they're so much gentler on a baby's skin, so why wouldn't we use them? Third stage, so the delivery of the placenta, in most of these circumstances you do need to have drugs because your body's not going to use its normal physiological processes to necessarily get your placenta out. So I knew immediately that I would have an injection for that. Clothing, making sure that people are aware that they can bring their own clothes in, they can have them made if they know a family member that might be able to knit something. For Bee's outfit, I asked my partner's mum to do it because she actually knitted her a full outfit, and I wanted something that was hers because I knew I wouldn't have anything to fit. I didn't want something just from the hospital. And there are different things out there as well. Birth partner, who do they want with them? Do they want a few people? Do they want one person? They might not want anybody. Lighting, for some people, that's really, really important, giving them that similar setting. So if they were going to go into a birth centre, let's dim the lights. If they were going to be at home, we can still put that all into a very similar situation because you can still make it as homely as you physically can. Music. So when a baby's born and the baby's died, all you hear is that. It's silent. And that is the one thing that you can use to take away that silence, and it can actually change the mood completely. So I had a playlist that I played throughout the whole of my labour, and so when she was born and it was quiet, it never truly was quiet because I had music playing. And as my placenta was delivered, How Far I'll Go from Moana was playing, and it was quite funny, so we were all laughing. And little moments like that, now when that comes on, I chuckle to myself. And I've other people, some of them might even be in the room, who've sent me that, like when it's come on and things like that, and they'll have a little laugh in the car because it's quite funny. Revealing the gender, so if they didn't know what they were having, so they can still do that. That's not our job to do. Ask them, what would you prefer? Do you want to say what you've got? Does mum, does dad, does grandma? Do you want me to do it? It's up to you. Photographs, do they want them through labour? Do they want them from the offset? Do they want the ones at the head end? Do they want them at the bottom end? Where do you want them? Do you want a video? You've videoed all your other births. Do you want to video this one? It's not any different. So all those choices should still be there. So I was 23 weeks and 2 days, and I put query choice here for my KCL, and I went for the KCL. So KCL is documented as feticide, and I think the only time we ever see words like that are homicide, suicide, genocide. Not very nice words. I think you can all agree. So I think that's a disgusting word. I hate it, and I will never use that word to anybody. I always use KCL. It says what it is without saying what it is, but people know what it is. And now you all do anyway. So I just think it's not a nice word, and to see that written on your baby's information, it's not nice, and it feels like something I've done and I've inflicted, and it's a horrible thing to do. So I made a decision. Obviously we were having KCL, and I didn't necessarily want to have it, but I said, okay, I know what happens normally. You normally go to the fetal medicine unit to have this, and what happens is you go in, you go into the ground floor of the hospital, you go through the ultrasound department, you go into the fetal medicine department, have this procedure, and then you walk out with your dead baby inside you, and you go into the ultrasound department again with all the people. There's an antenatal clinic just outside, and you get into a lift, you go up 2 flights of stairs, you get into the labour ward, you check in, and then you end up going to have your induction, whoever is in the right frame of mind at that point to have one by that point. And I said, yeah, I'm not doing that. What do you need to do this on the labour ward? And they said, the equipment to do it, somebody who's used to handling the equipment, and a high-spec scanner. So I said, so you can do it on the labour ward then, can't you? and I don't think they'd have argued with me at that point. And that's what happened. So they met me in the room as I arrived. So the lovely needle there goes directly into the heart under ultrasound, and it was done on the delivery unit. And thankfully, for the first time ever, she was still for a scan. And it worked first time. So they come back 30 minutes later and double check that it has worked. And it had. So I said, I want to start the induction straight away. So another choice. For an induction, I had to have vaginal examinations. So it was the point, really. I couldn't really do it without them. So I needed to have examinations. And I got PTSD from having my examinations, and not necessarily through anything anyone did, but just because of the situation. So having things like a smear afterwards totally changed how I booked 5 appointments, I think, before I actually ended up having a smear, and cried all the way through it. And having that kind of experience, and the way that people are treated, and the way that we sometimes see people doing examinations or anything that's remotely intimate of any description, we need to really think about how we are advocating for people as well, because people they put their hand in, they take their hand out, and it's just like, put it in again. No, that's not okay. It's abuse. And people should be told about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, at what point you're going to touch them. Are you going to use gel? You need to let them know, because that's likely to be cold. So tell them that's what's going to happen, what to expect, at which point you're going to do something, what they say to get you to stop, and that you're actually going to stop. You're not going to do something completely different or carry on doing what you're doing, regardless of the fact that they've said no. So making sure that people have that, and it's explained to them before the procedure, not during, because at that time it's going to be difficult to register what you're doing. So if you are going to do something beyond what you said you were doing, explain it beforehand, so somebody can have that in their head and go through it in their head before they're in that predicament. And then I started with misoprostol, so I started having examinations, and then these were inserted vaginally as well. And then obviously that was part of the induction. So the induction takes quite a long time, and in terms of the room, we have a bereavement room, and then you don't deliver in there. The delivery room is opposite. So I decided that I didn't want to go in the delivery room, because the delivery room for me is work, and the bereavement room wasn't work in the same capacity. So I said, I'll go in the delivery room to deliver, but I do not want to be in there at any other point. And when I started taking pain relief, even though it was just like codeine, they said, you need to go in the delivery room. And I was like, I will cross my legs as hard as I can. I will not deliver my baby in the bereavement room, but I'm not going in there. And I didn't, and they did understand. But I said, I can't do it. So there was quite a wait. So we just watched films, had pain relief, and then our parents came back in for a little while because I couldn't have any more misoprostol. So we said, come in, have lunch with us, and then I can start having the misoprostol again in the afternoon. So they came back, and my waters broke. So they didn't spend a lot of time with us, and I laboured for a few hours and gave birth. So she was delivered straight into skin to skin. A partner cut the cord, and she sat me with for a while on my chest until I started projectile vomit after the centimetry. And then as soon as my placenta was out, I got off the bed with 3 people following me going, where are you going? And I went back to the bereavement room. I said, I'm not staying in there, I told you I wasn't. So off I went with her down the corridor and back to the room. So they were like, okay, running with the wheelchair behind me. So obviously I did have those choices, and I had skin to skin, but none of these were discussed. These were all things that I said, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. But at no point was it a discussion. It was, I'm just going to tell you what's happening now, and this is going to happen now, and this is going to happen now. But I shouldn't have had to do that, but no one had the conversation with me. So I had all of those, and we'd bought a cord tie and put it on her. And we just kind of spent time with her, and we took our own photographs. And obviously you have that choice of whether you meet your baby or you don't meet your baby, and some families do make that decision not to meet the baby, and that might not have been our choice, but that's their choice, and if they're comfortable with that, then that's okay. but sometimes it's because they're scared, because they don't know what the baby's going to look like, they don't know how big the baby's going to be, they're not expecting the baby to come out pink, because that's not what babies look like. They might not have ever seen a premature baby, they don't know what that abnormality that they've been diagnosed with looks like. And also, your baby's been diagnosed with an abnormality, but you won't be able to see it, like a brain abnormality. That really messes with your head. Because you want them to come out with 5 heads, because that is easier to process, because my baby's clearly weird and abnormal and it's got all these things wrong with it. And actually, no, nothing there. Or you were expecting something to be much worse, or it's been made out that it's going to be a lot worse, and they come out and you think, oh, where's that thing that they said it's clearly wrong? So sometimes it's that, and that the skin might look different. So they're expecting, because they said, well, the baby died a couple of days ago, and so the skin's changed. And they're like, well, what does that mean? Is it going to come out a different colour? Is it going to come out with some skin missing? What does that all mean? So we made a book called a memory book. There's a copy of it outside for anyone who wants to look, to help prepare families for that exact moment, because just having that education behind all of that could be the difference of whether they meet their baby or not. And just to make sure that they are prepared for what they're going to see and what to expect, and how that baby's going to feel and how they'll handle, and what that size will be. And actually, pink skin is completely normal, because all these other babies had pink skin as well. And actually sometimes if they have little blisters on their hands, that's fine as well, because that's normal as well. So just making sure that they know about it. So obviously I said that we took our own photographs. Before we were going in, I knew over that weekend, I knew about Remember My Baby, so I contacted them before I was going in, told them when I was going to go in, and then they sent somebody the day after she was born. And they came in and took photographs, and this was one of the photos that we received a few weeks later. And I absolutely hate these photographs, and it's probably one of them things that a lot of people don't expect you to come out with, but I hate them. That isn't what my baby looked like. She's been edited. She's looks really dry. She was just in a basket, and despite me asking whether they wanted me to move her, he said no, it's fine. And I didn't really it didn't capture her for me. All the photos I've got of her, she looks completely different to that. And they're all in black and white, which is, you sign a form to say they will be in black and white, but I know my baby was pink, and that's fine, because she's my baby and I know that, and I wanted that choice, because I should get both and decide which ones I use. And I don't care if they're unedited or edited, I don't mind, but I think having that choice would have been better, and that's personal to me. I know the families that absolutely adore their photos. I've got one photo that you'll see a lot, which is of a nappy, and I use that one all the time, and I love it, but it's only because I asked for that photo that I got that one, and now I do use it a lot. But I don't connect with these photos. They're not my baby to me. So, inkless prints. If anybody's not familiar with inkless prints, it means that they use a wipe, and the paper then responds to the wipe that's been put on the hand or the foot. So there's no ink on baby, and you can get perfect prints from them. There's 3D casts. A lot of trusts aren't using these. Some trusts are. You've got Judah's Cloud here, so you've got Jenny here who can wave. You've got a table outside for Judah's Cloud. Go and speak to them about what they're doing there. But there's a 3D casting service that they're helping with, and that's something that it allows you to hold something tangible and to be feel your actual baby as the baby is, and that's something that you just aren't ever going to get to do again. You don't get to ever hold your baby again, so it's the closest thing you've got. And to be able to have that is incredible in itself. This service was only there not only a few months before I actually got mine, so and I'm so thankful for that. Memory boxes, they are just a starter pack. A memory box is something that's just there. It's a prompt, and it's filled with things that are an idea for families to do, but it doesn't necessarily define that this is what you get and this is what you do, because realistically they've already got memories, they've created things, and that box might be filled with the things that they've already done, the things they've already got, the scan photos that they've got, some of the things they might have already bought, and then they might make it into something that's all about them, and they can take stuff out and tell them they can take stuff out. No one is offended and they can just put it on the side and we'll reuse it, or we can send it back. But you don't have to keep it as it is, because some of those things in there might not be your taste, or they might not be for you. And this was a Falui memory box, which a lot of people will be quite familiar with. They stock 90% of units in the UK now with their boxes. And then I made my own box. So I've just got this box. It's from Next. They're £10 and they sell them every year. And I just wanted something more celebratory, because the Falui box to me meant babies dying and work to me, because I give these boxes out, I don't receive them. And that was a weird concept for me. So I got one of these boxes, and it's got her outfit in, it's got the things that she should have worn, so the outfit she should have come home in, the scan photos, and then her ashes. And then a lot of families will have teddies. They'll have them at home, they'll have one sat waiting for them in the Moses basket or in the cot, or ones that have been given to them. And we should make sure that families have got an appropriate size teddy as well, because having something there that's overwhelming can actually sometimes be a reminder of what you didn't get, because your baby should have been big enough to be with that teddy. Having something that's from home that was theirs, and it's not just one necessarily from the memory box. So having, that was Bee's teddy, so her thing's obviously elephants. So having her own teddy with her, that was hers, that was meant for her, was really important. But not a lot of families will necessarily know that they can do that, because are they allowed to? Is it okay to bring stuff from home? Can they pick the baby up? Can they do this? Can they do that? And it's not, we should be asking them, can I pick your baby up? Can I dress your baby? Can I give them a teddy? It's not for them to ask us, but we just need to put the power back into their hands, because they've had all these choices and that they got at the beginning of the pregnancy, and all of a sudden they've gone, nope, don't get any of that now. And they go, so what do I get? Because I've got a box and that's all I've got. Clay imprints. So I know a few trusts that actually take these out of the box and only give them to specific families because they're entitled to them. But actually, my ethos is that try everything, and if it fails, it's better to have tried and failed than not done it at all. So if you're saying actually baby's too small for this, I don't think we should use it. But have you tried? If you've not tried, then you can't say that it won't work, can you? Because you've not tried. Or with this, you don't even have to have the hand and footprints on it. You could do it with something else. You can put the name onto it. You can utilise the clay at home. You could make something with the clay and put something else in there. I've seen families do all sorts of things with these. So don't take them out, because that's a missed opportunity for them that they could have. They might just want to do it together. They might do something else at another point. And it's entirely up to them what they do with that. It's not our choice to take that away from them. And all the things that you then do with these families give them the opportunity to then go and make other things. So by helping them create memories in the hospital or the hospice, you're then going on to give them more memories as well. So by doing a really good set of hand and footprints, I've got a necklace now that I wear every single day, and I carry that around with me. This is one of our casts. This is made from our dolls, but by having some casts done in the hospital, that family can then go, you know what, actually I've held them for a while, I'm going to actually have them framed now. And they might have them framed, or they might keep one set out and one set framed. So they've got a choice of what to do, and it's something else that they can be then given. I wrote a poem, which I'll read out, that was about memory making, that I wrote. Would you believe me if I told you that I know this is hard for you too? Who wants to care for the family whose sadness fills the room? The time that you spend making memories with us can truly heal wounds you wouldn't know there was. The handprints and footprints that you pressed into a card are now printed on a pendant close to my heart. The feet that are moulded into the clay that you rolled, I sit there tracing them like a story retold. The photographs that were taken are the most important to me. They bring back the memories you took of my bee. And why, you may ask, am I telling you this? Because you need to know how important it is that none of these are missed. I know that you're busy, but I know that you care, but I can't get to heaven by climbing the stairs. I can't recreate all the things that I have, so it's important to offer every option you can. I sit here wishing for memories I could have had, but it's because of you, my midwife, I have all that I have. So I hope that just kind of resonates with you, that just doing something in the moment or offering something in that moment isn't just that moment. it actually lives on with that family for years and years to come, and potentially their children, and years and years and years, and far beyond where you are right now. And that makes such a difference to these families. And there's other things like keepsakes that they can take, so heart in the hand. And even now, I never got a heart in the hand keyring, so the concept is that the heart goes in baby's hand and then the family keeps the keyring. And I didn't get one of these because they didn't exist at the time. But since then, I've gone and put the heart in B's spot, which is a bench in a park, and I've got the keyring, so I've got a connection to that spot now as well. So it's things that families can still go on to do by finding out about different things that are available. And I talked about clothes, so making sure that they know where to get them from and the different choices of clothes. So sometimes some of the clothes will be wool based, so they've been knitted, or those angel gowns that are typically made from like things like wedding dresses, but also helping them make the decision about what type of clothes might be best. So if a baby, for instance, has a condition called hydrops, which is where they lose a lot of fluid after delivery because they're very full of fluid. So they typically will just cover the clothes in a lot of fluid. So something absorbent isn't really beneficial because the baby will get really covered in a lot of watery blood, and that's not nice for families. And then they often then don't want to see the baby anymore. So by giving them the right information about what's best for them and what would be good for their baby, and giving them the right information, they can then feel empowered and make a decision, giving them a choice of clothes and explain the difference between what there is and what they can have, and where, or we can get something from somewhere, or where you can go and do that in the time you're at home. I had an outfit that was knitted for B that was made by her nana, so it was nice for her to have something. And being with baby, so we've got a Cuddle Cot set up outside for anybody who's not familiar with them. It's on and functioning as it would normally. So to just give you a bit of an idea, so we had a Cuddle Cot, and there's also co-cots, but the Cuddle Cot allows families to bring in their own Moses basket if they want to, or use the Moses baskets that are available, so you can get smaller ones, bigger ones, and different size mats that go inside it to keep baby cool, so they've got more time with baby. And in terms of moving baby, we were talking about moving baby to the mortuary. I carried B in my arms, and that was what the mortuary visiting room looks like. Looks like a nursery. It had a cot in it, it had a changing table, it had a bath in it, it had a rocking chair. And the things like going to a mortuary, they always have some form of room to take them into, whether it looks like that or whether it's just a typical visiting room. But there's somewhere for them to go, and they don't have to allow someone else to do it. I carried her in my arms and walked her up 2 flights of stairs to do that because I needed to do that for me. And it was important to me to do it, and families should be given the choice. There are other choices. Someone else doesn't have to do it, whether that's walking them to the doors, whether it's walking them to a particular place to hand over, and then they can meet the staff if they want to. And that is important to some families, but it is a choice. So that was B being left in that cot, and that was the only time I ever put her in a cot, and that will be the only time I ever put her in a cot. So that was really important as well for me. And then we made a decision to have a post-mortem. We just said we are having a post-mortem because we didn't really get asked, but I said I needed to, and obviously we knew why we were having it, so I think they were a bit like they weren't sure whether to ask or not, but I needed to because I didn't believe that my perfect little baby had a brain condition because she looked perfect. So for me that was important. And we got the post-mortem report back, and we had a meeting, met up with a consultant who basically said, yeah, she's got schizencephaly, and that was it, basically. And then it was only a few months later I thought, I need to see this because I know the post-mortem report's not going to be a sentence, so I need to see it. So I asked for it, and I was given it by hand, and that was what I got given. And for someone to give it me by hand and not write a name on it, I found a little bit hard. That just one little thing to say, because she's not called Infant of Stephanie Wild. She's got a name and she's her own person, and it would have just been nice for someone to acknowledge that. And it did say she's got open lip schizencephaly, which is a rarer version of schizencephaly. And then it also came back that, and some of the things that people don't always know that will come back, they think it's going to be quite specific to the baby, but it came up that the placenta actually had something wrong with it. and there it is. Placental examinations shows evidence of chronic kystocytic intervillositis. So that's basically associated a lot with severe intrauterine growth restriction and stillbirth. And obviously far related from my very normal pregnancy that I should have had, and actually that was the outcome. So that's completely changed my future pregnancy care, even though the condition she had shouldn't really happen again. But now I've got this to contend with. So it changed everything. So it wasn't really stuff to do with her specifically. And then I knew counselling was an option. That's what people do when people die. Like, you go for counselling. So I did have counselling. My counselling consisted of a counsellor coming to my house because she worked at the same place I worked, and they didn't want to make me go to the hospital. So she came to my house. She didn't ask B's name once. She didn't ask really very much information about what had happened, and I told her not to come again, and that was my counselling experience. So it was great. So yeah, I was cured after one session. Yeah, so yeah, it wasn't really great. And a funeral, that was a choice, and I know you were talking about funerals before, that in most cases funerals now are par for the course. You have a funeral if you want one, and if you don't, that's okay too. But it can be, most places will assist you with making a plan for a funeral, or the hospital can help you with that, depending on what you prefer. But I know for us, we went to an independent funeral home, and it cost us £80 for a full funeral, and it was hardly anything for a 23-week baby. And obviously now there is some funding through the government for those that are above 24 weeks up to the age of 18. That can be applied for, so it helps families a lot. But in my case, it was still very cheap to say that I had a full funeral, but I don't really remember much of it. And we took B home, and this was how I decided to have after a little while. So her ashes went into a heart-shaped urn, the inside, and those are the clothes she should have gone home in. So there's some clothes that she had, but the outfit that I put in a memory box is on the ears, so it was a little elephant outfit. And obviously that is her, and the buttons have got a name on them and a date of birth. So that was the way I got to take her home, and she did get to wear the clothes that she never would have done. So in terms of how you can improve choices for families, listen, read the notes, ask questions, because asking questions will give you the answers you might need to help support that family better. If they say, I don't want to see my baby, you can ask them why. There's nothing wrong with that. Or if they've said, you know what, we're going to have the funeral tomorrow, so I don't want my baby dressing, but actually a lot of the time they can have the baby dressed, but we can undress baby tomorrow if that's okay. You can talk them through things. There's things that might be worrying them, which is the reason they don't want them, or I don't want to have the cast because it might ruin the skin. Well, actually, we do X, Y, Z to help prevent that, so you could still have them. And so answering those questions, asking the right questions, can make the difference between that family's grief and how they process it. Challenge things just because things are going on where you work, with colleagues, how people talk to each other, even between each other. Some people speak so horrifically between each other and to the people that they care for. It's not okay. It's not okay for anyone to speak to anyone like that, and especially in the environment we're in. We're supposed to practice what we preach, and I sometimes do not see that. So challenge things. If you don't think something's right, take it higher. If it's not action, take it above that. And if you ever need any help with it, I'm more than happy to. Educate. If you know something that someone else doesn't, there's nothing wrong with helping share that information, because you're all sat here hoping, taking something away from today that someone else doesn't know. And there'll always be something that someone doesn't know. So do look at that person when they're in that predicament of going, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how best to do that. Oh, you know what, I've got a really good way of doing that I learned. Can I help show you, or can I help you? Do you want me to come in with you? There's nothing wrong with doing that at all, because we've all been in that position where we didn't know anything, and we all need to help each other continue to learn. And I know at the beginning it was said about you're always learning, and you'll continually learn throughout your career, and even till the day you leave your career, you retire, and you still learn. And it just happens, and you do, and the stuff evolves all the time, so there's always room for improvement. Perfect never exists, because there's always something new to bring into it. And advocate. it's so important. As someone who didn't get advocated for in so many situations, I can't express that one enough, because if someone had advocated in some circumstances for me, my story could be very different right now, and the way that my career's progressed and other things as well. It's just totally changed the way I am. I know making families understand that grief is not the same. It doesn't follow a perfect little loop and this is how it goes and you go from feeling like shit to being cured. It doesn't happen like that, and families do need to be aware that that's the reality of it, and that realistically you might feel good one day and that's okay, and you're allowed to laugh and you can go out with your friends, and if you want to get drunk, or if you want to stay in bed all day, and then if you want to sit and cry for 2 days, that's fine as well. We all have these moments and we go back and forth and we never get to a point of being cured. And if 7 years down the line you feel horrific, that's okay too, because it doesn't cure, it just keeps doing this, and it'll go all over and you'll get triggered unexpectedly, and that's okay. But just make sure you build your circle of those people, and you will lose people, but you'll gain new people as well, and sometimes those new people are a lot better than the ones you left in the first place. And in terms of us as a charity, we've now got parent speakers that we invite to our study days so that they can share their stories, so we learn from them as well. And we share a lot of posts about personal things that we've experienced. I personally share quite a lot to try and not necessarily, like we were saying, it's not a blaming culture, and that's not what we are in any of our the things that we do in midwifery and nursing. You shouldn't be blaming. It's all about how we can learn from it, and the things that I have experienced. This is why I built the charity, because I can learn from the things that have happened even in my own care, and I can show other people how just you saying one thing or doing one thing can really impact them in the future. So if anybody does know anyone who wants to speak at any point, they only have to get in contact with us and we can signpost them. And as professionals, you guys need to look after yourselves as well. It's not just about the families, it's about you. And if you've got nothing left to give, you can't give these families the right care. So recognise that you are human, you're not a machine, and that it's okay not to be okay. We all have those days where we're just not, and you can't always explain why, but it's not the right day. And if you can't give that family what they need, don't do it. And there will always be someone there that can do that for you. Ask questions, whether that's asking the family, whether it's asking colleagues, if it's asking someone more experienced than you, if it's asking someone who's got a certain profession about something in particular, if it's asking a charity. And if you need support, that's fine, just build up the right network around you. Sometimes it's not the people that you expect will be there to support you, but just find who those people are, and if that's any of the people that have got up and spoken today, most of them will be happy to help, if not all of them. But they will be happy to help you. And you are important, you really are, because you make the difference to so many families, but you also really need to look after yourselves. Thank you very much.